Hey, my little intermediate algebra mathletes. Let's get this party started and let's start talking about solving absolute value equations. All right, so absolute value equations, you dealt with absolute value before. Absolute value looks like it is all about the distance away from zero. Normally in class, I ask you what absolute value is, but since we're not in class, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. It is distance away from zero. And because of this word distance, super important distance, that means that these things should always equal positive numbers. These things should always be equal to positive numbers because distance is always positive. Now, many of you are going to be like, Mr. Armstrong, I can drive my car backwards. I can walk backwards. And to that, whenever you drive your car backwards, my little sillies, or if you are going to walk backwards because some psycho stalker killer is after you, I don't know why you're walking backwards, turn around and run forwards. But if you are walking backwards or driving backwards, you are still going a positive distance. Your odometer on your car does not go backwards if you're driving backwards, it doesn't erase miles. Okay. So distance is always positive, and absolute value is all about that distance away from zero. How far away are numbers from zero? So it looks like that, these giant little bars right here. Okay. I try to make sure I emphasize that information when I make absolute values because it's very easy for absolute values to look like numbers one. See if I put it like this. See, that looks like 1x1. Okay. Normally, when I make my absolute values, I kind of darken them in for you so you know, oh, that's not a number one. So that's like an absolute value of x. So if we think about this, we are solving equations. So this is an equation. This is like one of the problems that you might get. Super easy. They want to know what are the values of x that are 4 away from 0. Okay. So hopefully you guys know that. But what I want you to understand about this is that absolute value is really setting up two equations for you. These are two equations that are in disguise. Okay. So it's very important that you understand that. So I believe I might have, yep, down here is what I was telling you. They are two equations in disguise. Okay. Meaning that you must have two answers. There are two answers to these. Because when you think about it, there are two numbers that are 4 away from 0. There's one on the positive side and there's one on the negative side. Okay? If you are thinking about this, there are two answers that are 4 away from 0. Here's 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. These guys are the answers. So x up here is equal to a negative 4 and a positive 4. Okay? There are two answers. All right? Because you are really working with two equations. Most of the time, the first equation is the one that you guys get correct, and you're always good about giving me the first answer. It's the second equation that throws you off and messes everything up. Okay, so hopefully I'm going to set that clear for you guys today about how to write these equations. All right. Now, other things in your assignment. When it comes to your assignment, there's going to be two blanks, and it's going to say x1 equals blank and x2 equals blank. If you read the fine print below it, it usually says x1 is the smallest number. Okay? So that means in the first blank, put the smaller of the two answers. Okay? If you missed the problem, go back and make sure that you got the answers in the right blank. So this first blank should be negative 4. The second blank will be the larger of the numbers. Okay? Pay attention to the fine print below your answer blocks. That is super important. Most of the time, students miss questions because we are not reading the fine print. Welcome to college. You need to read. Okay? If you mess this up, I do not give full points for answers that are not correctly written. Okay, I might go back and add a couple points because you do have the answers, but I will not give you full points because you can't read and put numbers where they need to go. Okay, I want to make that super clear right now. Make sure you read the fine print from here on out on every assignment, every question, every quiz, every test. Read the fine print below the answer blocks because it tells you what to do and how to put them in. So if it says x1 is the smallest number, then you better put the smallest number in for x1. Another way that they might write it, I know we see this later on. I can't remember though if we see it in this one. They might also say that x2 is greater than x1. That means that x2 is bigger than x1. x2 is the biggest, x1 is the smallest. Or they could write x1 is less than x2. Again, remember this, like in the mouth is eating the bigger number. The mouth is eating the bigger number. So again, x1 is the smaller answer, x2 is the larger. Sometimes we like to put that information. Again, read the fine print and make sure you understand how they want you to put your answer in there. I cannot stress that enough. All right. So let's do some more. So again, here's like what you're going to see most of the time though. They're going to give you a nice little absolute value equation and it's going to be equal to some number. All right. Before you begin anything, super important what I'm about to tell you. Before you start writing your equations, because you're going to write two equations, and I'm going to show you how to do that here in a second. You have to make sure the absolute value is by itself. I cannot stress that enough. So when we look up here, everybody that is between the absolute value signs is trapped. So these people are A-okay. What I'm talking about, is there anything outside my absolute value over here to the right? Don't worry about the equal sign, but to the right of it or to the left of it. Okay? Do you see any numbers here and here or operations? If you do, we have to fix that. Okay? So, super important right here. Before you do anything, you have to make sure the absolute value is by itself. I know that I have that on one of my slides. I don't think I put that on this one. Let me see what's the next one. Nope, not that one. Right here. This is where I have it. You see how we have this plus 14 right here? That's bad news bears. Before you can do anything, you have to make sure, oh man, I gave away some extra information right there. That's all right. You have to make sure the absolute value is by itself before you make the two equations. So in this guy up here, you will subtract 14 to both sides. And so that gives us the absolute value of x plus 2, absolute value equal to negative 10. This is what you will make two equations off of because the absolute value is by itself. Okay? You have to make sure this happens first before you do the equations. Uber important. Okay? All right, so let's jump back to this guy. So my absolute value is by itself, so we can make two equations. So let's talk about how we make the first one. So the first equation, super easy. Drop the absolute value signs. That's it. And this is the one that most of you are really good about being able to do. This is the answer that I normally get for most of you. So all you do to make the first equation is drop the absolute value signs. I don't know why I draw an extremely huge 1. So there we go. That's what the first equation looks like. And you'll solve it. So add 1, 4x is equal to 7, and then divide by 4. Divide by 4. And now you know that x is equal to, now many of you are going to go to your dang calculator and you're going to say 7 divided by 4. You're going to do this. Divided by 4. And you're going to tell me, Mr. Armstrong, the answer is 1.75. And I'm going to be, that is absolutely not correct. Okay? Welcome to college, where we love our answers as fractions. So unless told otherwise, in the end, your answer needs to be a fraction. So let me introduce you to your most important friend on the graphing calculator. And I teach this according to the TI-84. If you are using some other calculator, you are on your own to learn its capabilities. Okay? But if you want to talk to me in a Zoom session, or email me, or text me, or set up some sort of tutoring, or things like that, phone call, we can do that, and I can talk you through some of your calculator stuff. I know a vast majority of calculators. Okay? And if you downloaded any of the apps that I recommended, like the Graph and Calc for the iPhones, or the Wabbit MU for the Androids, you should be, what I'm teaching you right here is A-okay for what you're doing on your calculator. So when you guys go to do this, you need to take this 7 over 4 and don't do the division, but put it in the calculator and see if this thing is reduced all the way. Because your final answer for these are going to be fractions, and you need to make sure that they're reduced. So let me show you your best friend. Your best friend, and here your calculator can do that fraction. It's super awesome. It's going to be amazing. Watch this. You're going to hit alpha, y equals. And right there are all your fraction needs. This is the guy that we're going to use more than anything. And then down here, I want to talk to you about number 4. Number 4 lets you take things from fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. Okay? So we're going to do number 1. Look at that. Oh, it looks just like the fraction that's on my page. Look at that. 7 over 4. It's going to look just like that over here. We're going to put 7, and then we're going to scroll down to 4. And then hit enter, and right there, this is a reduced fraction answer. If this fraction needs reducing, the calculator will do it and show you the answer. So right there, that is the first answer to our problem. And again, how did I do this? Alpha, y equals. There's the fraction key that you want to use. And it looks just like it. That's what's great about this calculator. I love it because everything we put into this calculator will look just like what I write down on this piece of paper. So the answer for this is x is 7/4. Let me show you another piece. Again, if you went into your calculator and you took the 7 divided by, well, let me clear this out here. 7 divided by 4, and you're like, no, the answer is 1.75. I'm going to be like, no, it's not. Hit your alpha, y equals, scroll down to number 4, and this will take that decimal answer. When you hit enter, see it says answer, and it puts this right there. This means fractions to decimals, decimals to fractions. So it's going to take this decimal answer you had right there and shoot it back into fraction form for you. And there you go. Your answer needs to be fractions unless it tells you otherwise in the fine print that I talked about back here that is underneath the answer boxes. This will tell you if it wants it in some other form. But more often than not, about like 98% of the time, your answer needs to stay as the fraction. So this is either x1 or x2. I don't know which one it is until I get the other equation solved. So the first equation, super simple. Drop the absolute values and solve. All of you are really good at getting me this answer. It's the second equation that throws us off. You're going to do two things for the second equation. For the second equation, you're going to, I put a lot of room there, drop the absolute value sign. Okay? So we're going to drop the absolute value just like before. So we're going to have a 4x minus 1 because these are going to go away. And now here's the new part. You are going to make the right side of the equal sign the opposite signs. So on the right side, over here, everybody becomes its opposite. What's positive becomes negative. What's negative becomes positive. Okay? That's the part where most of us mess up. So when we make this second equation, we drop the absolute value sign and we make everything over here on the right side its opposite. So a positive 6 becomes a negative 6. And now you solve. That's it. That's all you need to do. You set up your two equations and you solve them. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay? So we solve it. So we're going to add 1. That's going to give us 4x equals to negative 5. Divide by 4. Divide by 4. And if you go to your calculator and you put in the negative 5/4 to check it, because some of us don't know how to reduce, and that's okay. You let your calculator do the dirty work. Negative 5/4. Hit enter. Yep, it's reduced. So there's the second answer. Negative 5/4. And now you know which answer is which. So which one of these is X1, the smaller answer? And that will be the one in blue. This is X1. And this one is the larger answer, X2. How do I know that? This guy's negative, this one's positive. Simple, easy peasy. Negative is always the smaller answer, positive is always the larger answer. Okay? And there you go. That's it. That's all there is to absolute values. You write two equations and you solve them and you make sure that you put the answers in the correct spots. Okay? So go ahead and pause the video. Sorry. And give this one a shot. Go. All right. So your first equation, all we do is drop the absolute value signs. And we don't have to, the absolute value here is by itself, so we don't have to worry about doing any manipulation first, like what we had to do right here. Okay? So you drop the absolute values, and this is what you get. 2x plus 7 all over 3 equal to 7. That's the first equation. Let's go ahead and write the second equation. Again, to write the second equation, all we're going to do, drop the absolute values. 2x plus 7 all over 3 equal to, make this side the opposite. So the opposite of a positive 7 is a negative 7. There's the two equations. All we have to do now is solve. So in these, hopefully the first thing you did was you got rid of this division, because we don't like fractions. Okay, I know you hate fractions. So what we're going to do is what we call clearing the fraction. And that means that we're going to get rid of the denominator. So in order to clear the fraction, all you're going to do is multiply both sides by whatever this denominator is. Okay, and that's going to clear the fraction. So my denominator is a 3. So to clear that out, I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. So that gives me 2x plus 7, because that 3 out front cancels it out. That's called clearing the fraction. And then 7 times 3 is 21. See? No more fraction. That's a whole heck of a lot easier to solve. So let's go ahead and subtract 7. So this will give me 2x equal to 14. And then divide by 2. Divide by 2. One of our answers is x equal to 7. Okay? There we go. Over here, it's pretty much the same operations. The only thing that's changed is the negative 7. So since we cleared the fraction over here, we're going to do that again over here. We're going to multiply by 3. Clear that fraction out. Multiply by 3. So that gives me 2x plus 7, because the 3's canceled, because we cleared it, equal to negative 21. Then subtract 7. So that gives me 21x equal to, 2x equal to negative 28. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. X equals negative 14. And now you've got your two answers, and now you know which one's which. So this over here is the x1, because it's the negative. This guy is the x2. Ta-da! Other cool things about absolute value, you can always take your answers and plug them in to check them. So I can take 7. 2 times 7 is 14. 14 plus 7 is 21. 21 divided by 3 is 7. And the absolute value of 7 is 7. That makes sense. Plug in negative 14. 2 times negative 14 is negative 28. Plus 7 is negative 21. Divided by 3 is negative 7. The absolute value of negative 7 is a positive 7. See, it all checks out. So you can always plug in and check your answers to make sure that, oh, this is valid. All right, so let's finish this one up. So we've got it so that the absolute value is by itself. Go ahead, pause the video, solve it. Okay, so notice I still have some stuff covered up down here. Now, what most of you probably did was this. X plus 2 equals negative 10, and x plus 2 equals a positive 10, and you found out that x is equal to negative 12, and x is equal to a positive 8. And I will tell you that those answers are absolutely incorrect. Because if you plug those answers in, you will never end up with a 4. You will always end up with something bigger than 4. Okay, this is incorrect. Let me tell you why it's incorrect, and that was what I accidentally kind of spoiled earlier. Hopefully you didn't see it, but if you did, you knew that you should have just stopped right here, and that the answer is a D and E. This is what goes into those blanks for x1 and x2, because this answer is really a no solution. There is no answer to this. So no solution, or what you would see me write is a circle with a line through it. These mean no solution, but in our blanks we have to put D and E. Okay, does not exist. And the reason this does not exist is because of what I told you at the very beginning. Absolute values are distances away from 0. That means they should be equal to positive numbers. Okay? If you look over here at this problem, this absolute value is equal to a negative number. Okay? So what I have down below here is that absolute values cannot equal negative numbers. Those are D and E's, no solutions. Okay? Because you can never have a negative distance. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're like, Mr. Armstrong, didn't we just take this problem right here and it's negative right here, and then over here, Mr. Armstrong, it's negative right there. Isn't that violating what you... No, that's not violating what I'm saying. Because if you look at this, this is not an absolute value equal to a negative number. This is 4x minus 1 equal to a negative number. Okay? You dropped the absolute values here to be equal to that number. What you're concerned about is this part. Before you set up your two equations, if this is equal to a negative number, it's a D and E automatically, because absolute values cannot be equal to a negative number. Okay? This is an absolute value equal to a positive. That's okay. This is an absolute value equal to a positive. That's okay. This is an absolute value equal to a negative. Not okay. Okay, so the difference here is this is okay because it's equal to a positive number. This is a positive distance. When you get down here, you're not taking an absolute value equal to a negative number. You're taking an equation equal to that negative number. That's the difference. Okay, this is no longer absolute value in here. This is two equations. All right, so you got to be careful of that. Absolute values cannot be equal to negative numbers. It's not good. It's a D and E. It does not exist. Okay, so I believe I got one more problem. Let me double check. Yep, this is the last problem. Go ahead, pause the video and give it a shot. What? You don't want to pause the video and give this a shot? This is too complicated? Well, I promise you it's not. So the first thing you're going to do is look at this side over here. Is this absolute value by itself? Absolutely. There is nothing on the left. There's nothing on the right. So this absolute value is ready to go. So you don't have to worry about if this is equal to a negative number, because this is another absolute value. Remember, absolute values are always positive. Okay? So you don't have to worry about that. All you have to do is write your two equations. Let's talk about how this works. Just because there are two absolute values does not change what I have to do. Okay? Just because I have two absolute values, you're going to do the same thing. So to make equation 1, remember what I told you. All I said is drop the absolute values. So just because there are two of them doesn't change that. I'm going to drop the absolute values. So here's what the first equation looks like. Just drop the absolute values. Now let's talk about that second equation. There were two things you did. And just because there's two absolute values, it's not going to change things. Okay? We're going to drop the absolute values. So we're going to have x plus 1 over here. Now remember, the second thing I told you, to make the second equation, all you're going to do is take the opposites. Okay? So whatever was positive becomes negative. Whatever's negative becomes positive. So what's the opposite of a positive 6x? A negative 6x. What's the opposite of a negative 4? A positive 4. I did not change anything that I was doing. The first equation, I dropped the absolute values. The second equation, I dropped the absolute value, and I made the right side its opposites. It's the same thing. Just because there's two absolute values doesn't change what's going on. You make the equations the same way. All right, now pause the video and figure out your answers. Okay, so over here, all we're going to do is move this 6x to the left side. I always like to move the variables on the left side. Subtract 6x, subtract 6x. It gives me negative 5x plus 1 equal to negative 4. Because there is an invisible 1 in front of this. 1 minus 6 is negative 5. So then we'll subtract 1. Negative 5x equals negative 5. Divide by negative 5. Divide by negative 5. X is equal to a positive 1. So there's one of your answers. Working equation 2. I'm going to add 6x this time. Because how do I get rid of a negative 6x? I add it. Again, there's a 1 there. So this becomes 7x plus 1 equal to 4. Now I will subtract 1. So 7x equals 3. And then divide by 7. And if you go to your calculator and take a look at this and put it in, the reduced form is 3 over 7. So in the end, this one is your x1 because 3/7 is smaller than 1. So there's your x1, which is the 3/7. There's your x2, which is the number 1. And again, you can plug these in and check them, and you will get two values that equal each other. Okay? And that's it. That's how you solve absolute value equations. First, make sure your absolute value is by itself. Then, make your two equations. The first equation, all you do is drop the absolute values. The second equation, drop the absolute value and make the right side its opposites. Positives become negative, negatives become positive. And solve. Remember that if your absolute value is equal to a negative number, it's a no solution. And that is not meaning to bring that up, is solving absolute value equations. Have fun.